Hello, welcome to This Week on Mustard TV. Nearly a third of children in the east of England leave primary school either overweight or obese. Now the British Heart Foundation is calling for a ban on advertising junk food on television before 9 p.m. Well, it comes at a time when MPs on the Health Select Committee are putting pressure on the government to tax sugary drinks as part of a plan to tackle childhood obesity. They say overall it costs the NHS £5.1 billion every year. So would a sugar tax work? Here to discuss this evening, Catherine Jeans, who's a nutritional therapist. Also with us is Dr. Anne Swift, a public health consultant based in Cambridgeshire, and Professor Paul Dobson, who's the head of the Norwich Business School at the University of East Anglia. Well, could it work, Professor Dobson?
Yes, I think it can work, and the evidence shows it can work. The issue, though, is what else is people going to buy, and what are they going to eat? If they're going to eat less sugary products, are they going to substitute to something else? It could actually be worse for us. We also have to think about how the industry would be affected by this as well, and what their responses are. So I think it does need very careful thought. It's not something that could be implemented tomorrow. It would have an impact on the way industry works, but it'll also impact on consumers. And one of my particular concerns is that it could actually adversely affect low-income households, which tend to have a lot of sugar in their diets, and any tax that raises costs to them is bound to have an impact on them.
Well, let's ask Professor Dobson, is the industry doing enough on labelling? Are they getting it right?
I think there's two issues what the industry is challenged with. Part of the government's responsibility deal was to encourage manufacturers to reduce the levels of sugar in their products, and I think there has been some moves towards it, but I think for nutritionists and other observers, not enough movement. So there is a lot more they could do, but I actually agree with the sentiment that you expressed. The biggest problem is actually ignorance. Do we really know how much sugar we're consuming? Can I give you a simple example? Take a glass of water, fill it with 10 teaspoons of sugar, stir it, and then drink it, because that's what you're drinking in a can of fizzy drink that's sugared. People are just not aware of how much sugar there is, because it's hidden by the sort of tart taste that hides behind it.
So is it about personal responsibility, or do we need to put more of the responsibility onto the food producers and to those people who sell us the food?
I think it's both. I mean, really, I think we'll all agree it's both. I think as individuals, we need the information. So we have a problem with package labelling, and is it giving us nutritional information we understand and can be bothered to look at? Because if it appears too abstract and is not relevant to us, we're going to ignore it. So there is a degree of ignorance that we need to overcome, and self-awareness. The industry has a responsibility there to do it. The problem is, of course, they have an incentive to sell these goods and push them, and that's the same for retailers. And the kind of work that we looked at is about the pricing incentives that encourage people to eat high sugar, high fat products because they're heavily discounted. And that's the first problem. As soon as you buy it, you're going to consume it.
Yep. Yes.
And so actually getting people to look at healthy products, see them as good value, and encourage them to eating it is a big cultural shift that's going to be needed in this country. So I think government can do a lot to provide information, encouragement. Industry could do a lot if they thought actually it would be more profitable to focus on healthier products, but that needs consumers also to change their attitudes and show a greater willingness to eat these kind of healthier products.
So let's start looking at some solutions. We've talked the problems right through. What about a sugar tax? It's been tried, hasn't it, in Mexico, Paul Dobson?
It has. It's been tried, and it seems to be working. It was, I think, very well implemented, and that's been one of the issues with these kind of taxes, that there has to be enough political support for it, there has to be enough buy-in with the public to support it, because once it's implemented and the public start discussing it and realising it, that self-awareness also helps. And what we've seen in Mexico, and it's only been introduced in a year, is there has been a significant reduction in sugary drinks, which the tax was mainly aimed at.
But
so
what about Denmark? It didn't work there,
No,
did
that
it?
was a fat tax, and that didn't. And that shows an example where it wasn't so well implemented. It didn't have the full political support, and the industry lobbied incredibly hard to get rid of the tax. There were some issues there about substitution to buying different goods, but also actually about cross-border trade, and eventually the tax was scrapped.
So people were going out of the country to buy their shopping?
Yes. I mean, in the case of Denmark, there is a bridge over to Sweden, so it is possible and feasible. But I mean, whether it would have worked given time, I don't know. But one aspect does come out, and that is the level. You have to make it a significant tax level, because otherwise you're not going to get the shift in consumer demand. So Berkeley, for example, in America as a city has introduced a soda tax, but it seems to be so small we're not sure it's going to have any effect, whereas the Mexico one was quite significant. And it is interesting that in the UK they're talking about a 20% or that kind of level of tax. That would be massive. That would have an effect.
Absolutely. From a business perspective, is there any reason why healthier foods couldn't be marketed in that way, or is it just sort of tradition?
I think one of the issues is actually the incentive to overbuy for our needs, and this is why multi-buy deals work so particularly well with these unhealthy, high sugar, high fat products, because they are tempting to us both in the price
Addictive.
and the content, and we can't resist them. So when we see a deal, we get excited by those bright signs saying discount, so we tend to overbuy on those. And the big problem in this then is that we displace our healthy products.
So what are the tricks that the shops play to try and persuade us?
Well, multi-buys are just a classic. They lead into our instinct to always be on the hunt for products. So when we see things on discount, we get excited by that, we buy it. It's when we take them home that the problem starts, because we may have healthy products in our fridge, but they now don't look so tempting as the cake you've just brought home. So you basically substitute away towards unhealthy products. So it's not only displacement in the shop, it's what you do when you get at home. And that's why we see a lot of salad stuff wasted. I mean, the waste levels on lettuce is something like 60% of all lettuce bought just goes in the bin after a few days.
Well, I just want to ask Paul Dobson, you've done quite a lot of work about supersizing, haven't you? What have you found on that issue? What could be done?
Yeah, I mean, you only have to go to a fast food outlet or a coffee shop, and what you're incentivized is to go large, because the difference is just a few pence, but you're getting hundreds of extra calories. People don't realize how much calories there are in a latte from which is made of milk as a coffee, or just buying that extra large size of a sugary drink. It's huge extra calories for just a few pence. And I think that's the problem with supersizing. You're incentivized to go large, and of course once you buy it, you're going to consume it all. You're not going to think, oh well, I'll just leave that bit. The temptation is it's there, you're going to consume it.
Should supersizing be bad? Should we have controls on it then?
Well, I mean, one aspect is to have proportional pricing. In other words, if you increase the size, then the unit price remains the same, and that way you've taken away the discount element. I mean, that would be interesting. And I would be encouraging restaurants and retailers to try and do that. Take away the incentive to go large. Make people think that there might be some benefit financially in going small.
Okay, we're almost out.